All right. So I guess we'll get started then. My name is Casey Conlon. I am the coordinator for the Sustainability Roundtable, and I'm filling in today. I'm batting. Tara called me in. Tara's the lead on our programming committee, and she said, "Can you help facilitate this discussion group that we're having?" And I said, "Heck yeah," because there's a lot of good folks on this group, and so I'm excited about this topic. So I want to say thank you to Tara and the programming committee for helping us bring this topic to the conference and helping get everybody together. I want to thank SustainRT also for bringing this together, the Sustainability Roundtable. They are the driving force that's behind Tara, who is the driving force. The other thing that I want to point out before we get started is we have made this presentation publicly accessible to anybody using the link on your screen. You may not be able to click the link, but it's pretty easy to know there. It's all lowercase. I misspelled discussion, so I apologize about that, but it's bit.ly/SRT discussion 21. So discussion without the S. So I apologize for that, but that's the link that'll take you to this slideshow that we have here, which also includes a list of resources at the end that you can use as a kind of handout for the presentation. So today, and we can see my screen, right? Okay. Sorry, we got all different kinds of technologies, right? So today we are joined by a number of really great people, and we'll have more detailed introductions as we get into the presentation. We are joined by Pat Ashoon, who is from the Queens Public Library. Jen Ferris is from the Saratoga Springs Public Library, and Jensen Adams, who is the Energy and Sustainability Officer at the Kansas City Public Library in Missouri, not in Kansas. My name is Casey Conlon. I work as the Library Sustainability Coordinator at the Mid-Hudson Library System in New York, and I am also, as I said, the coordinator for the Sustainability Roundtable. We're coming together today to talk about measures. We want to hear from you. If you have things that you want to share, we have some kind of sage on the stage folks here who are our panelists who have some experience to kick our discussion off, but I'm going to be watching folks to see if they want to share things. I think that you will have the opportunity or the capability to unmute yourself if you wanted to contribute something vocally, but you can also use the chat. We'll keep an eye on that. So today, the way we have organized things and the way we define sustainability in SustainRT and in the American Library Association is around the triple bottom line. So when we talk about sustainability, we want to make sure that the things that we do are environmentally sound. And a lot of people think about that when they think about sustainability. We want to make sure that we're recycling and we're reducing our consumption and waste where we can and recycling where we can. But we also want to make sure that for something to be truly sustainable, for it to be able to continue, that it balances these other two pieces that we often don't account for. So we want to make sure that things are economically feasible. So that includes, can we pay for it, right? Can we actually afford to do this without bankrupting the library and compromising our ability to carry out our greater mission? And also, what are we doing with the funds that are entrusted to us by the community? So are you spending your funds on a corporation who has the same values as the library and is going to make things better for the earth than for the people in the world? Are you contributing your money to a local person or a local business that will keep the money in the local economy longer? Or is it going to a big box store or an e-retailer where you don't know what's happening with it and it's very quickly leaving your community? Finally, social equity. It shouldn't be finally, but it has been finally for a long time. We always consider the economic bottom line of things, but we very rarely consider the environmental aspect or the social equity issues that are present with a lot of the decisions that we make. So in the library, we have a huge leg up on social equity because our whole model is you come in and we can give you a book or a resource that you need for free, regardless of whoever you are. But we recognize now that we need to build more diversity. We need to be more inclusive, and we need to make sure that our libraries and the people working in our libraries reflect the people in our communities. And so we have to think about that when we think about our bottom line as well. Are people benefiting from this in the same way, or do we need to help some other folks out a little bit more? So this is the model that we're going to use today, and we have we're going to work through a couple different models or a couple different measurement tools that folks have found here. Maybe you've seen them before, maybe you'll get an in-depth look at them. But As we go through, again, I want to hear from other folks too. This is meant to be a discussion group. We're going to get things kicked off with some of the folks that we met earlier, and we're going to meet them in more detail. And then, like I said, if we have an opportunity and you have something that you want to share or you have questions, I want to be able to do that. So Pat, I wanted to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about the equity and diversity work that you have done as part of your work at the Queen's Library.
Okay. Hi, greetings from Queens Public Library, which serves the most diverse county in the United States. My name is Pat Eshan. I'm a community library manager in one of our small libraries. Queens Library, I just want to give you a brief introduction of Queens Library. Queens Library is for everyone, and at Queens Library, we speak your language. These two phrases describe Queens Library. Our programs and services, as well as our collection, lend weight to our slogans. During the pandemic, when the physical buildings closed, Queens Library didn't close. We were online and open 24/7, where online services like securing e-card, checking out e-materials, and other services were provided. Online programming started for all ages and for the diverse groups we serve. These are archived on the library's YouTube page, Facebook, and Instagram. If you need for more information for these programs, you can visit us at www.queenslibrary.org. I'll briefly tell you about one of the programs that the Friends of my branch library at Rosedale provided for the community during the shutdown. Now, the shutdown had gone on for a while and they felt that they had to do something for the community. So back in January, to commemorate the history-making event of the 59th inauguration, the Friends Group of Rosedale organized a free giveaway of 3 books to boys and girls in our community. This was a history-making event with the inauguration of the first Black woman Vice President, Kamala Harris. Prior to the book giveaway, there was an online read aloud of 2 of the books, The Story of Joe Biden by Dr. Jill Biden and Superheroes Are Everywhere by Kamala Harris and Mikhail Renee Rowe. The purpose of this giveaway was to inspire our young readers, especially our young girls, to aim higher and never to let go of their dreams. It was also to prepare our young readers to receive and understand the historic moment that is unfolding before them. Children accompanied by parents came to the venue all masked up, observing social distances to pick up their books. The third book was My Uncle Martin's Big Heart by Angela Faris Watkins. Through these books, the children in our community are able to read and learn about our new president, vice president, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, as I said, Queens Library serves a diverse community. In fact, we have the most diversified community in the whole nation. And we believe, we know that our collection and our programs reflect the diverse people that we have in our community. But until you try to evaluate your collection and your programs and measure them, you wouldn't know that you are serving everybody. Of course, it's not possible to serve everybody, to have materials to serve everybody in every group due to budgeting. And so there are tools to measure, and the Queens Library does have the tools to measure too, but for this discussion, we are going to use this table, diversity audit template, that was planned by Kimberly Powell. Now, if you want to know that you are really serving your community in a diversified and inclusive and equity manner, you have to, as I said, to evaluate your collection. So now using this table or this spreadsheet, you have your columns and you have your rows. Now you have to go to your physical shelf and look at your books. Now you have your columns, you have author, you have the title, and you have the different categories that you want to serve. you have to make sure that you are picking categories that is substantial to your community or to the society where you are serving. Now you have your author. So you look at your books, you put in your author, and then you put in the title. Now you're going to look at the columns to see your author is white, cis, straight, abled, neurotypical male, or white, cis, straight, abled, neurotypical female, or other categories. You have all your categories at the top. So now when you put your book in, the title and the author in, you are going to fill in what you have at the top. Each that you have, the genre and whatever you have, you put it in the spreadsheet. By doing that, you are going to know the gaps that you have in your collection. And if need be, you have to fill up those gaps in order to really represent the, excuse me, represent the group in your society or in the community that you are serving. So that when people come in the library, those who are coming in, they know that they are represented in your collection. A black girl, young black girl, pick up a book and see a book depicting the hero or the heroine as a young black girl, they know that they are being represented. The same way when you have a Hispanic young black man come in and pick a book, they are able to see themselves reflecting in the book. By so doing, you know and you are sure that you are actually representing your community and you're actually diversifying your collection and then making it equitable for everyone to come in and feel comfortable to share, feel comfortable at your library. Grace Lynn said something about, with this recent unprovoked anti-Asian bias and violence in the country, they said that, Grace Lynn said, the Bank Street Children's Book Committee put together a list of recommended titles by and or about the AAPI community. The books were published from 2015 to early 2021 and are arranged by age under 5, 5 through 9, 9 through 12, 12 to 14, and 14 and up. So these books, personally, I didn't know about this, but after attending her webinar, I got to know about this. So now Queen's Library, most of the libraries are not open yet, but come July 12th, every library will be opened and my library will be open. So I intend to go look at my shelves and actually use this spreadsheet to measure and evaluate my collection to see where I have loopholes and fill them up. So.
All right, thank you, Ashun. I appreciate that. So, I'm reminded of the quote, what gets measured improves, right? And so, is your collection actually diverse? Is it representative of the people in your community? It's hard to know that unless you actually do a reckoning with something like this spreadsheet here that we just looked at a second ago. So we have links here to these. Again, you can grab, you'll see the link down in the corner there, that misspelled link. I'm sorry about that again, that you can go and grab these resources and grab the links. You can jump right online there. But you can use these to assess the diversity and the representation in your collection. There is work involved, but it is important work, I think. As Ashun said, you really want people, do you really want people to come in and not see themselves reflected in your collection? That seems like a really lousy feeling and something that we should be working towards mitigating and actually having people feel like they're represented in your book collection. There's a couple other tools on here. The Doing a YA Collection Diversity Audit from the Teen Toolbox actually starts with looking at your community. So looking at demographics in your community so that you know what inclusive is actually going to look like for your community. The Fantasy Diversity Audit Spreadsheet sounds almost like fantasy baseball or football, but it's actually for it's actually an assessment of a lot of different fantasy books. So it can save you the work if you find these titles to see, all right, this has a cis white man as the lead. This has a cis white female. This is all neurotypical characters. So that does some of the work for you. And then this library collection shelf audit one, that's like a kind of sampling. If you want to go to one shelf and check out the diversity on that shelf, you can maybe use that as a signifier for the diversity of your collection, just judging by that one shelf. And then finally, the collection analysis tool is something from Diverse Book Finder, and you sign up for an account with them, and you can actually upload a list of ISBNs in text format or spreadsheet, and they'll spit out mechanically a list of the titles that you gave back to them and how diverse those are, what kind of representation is found in those titles. It currently is just for picture books right now, but we wanted to share those with you as well. So next up, we want to hear from Jen at the Saratoga Springs Public Library. And she's going to tell us a little bit about strategic planning and the Sustainable Library Certification Program.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. As Casey said, I'm at the Saratoga Springs Public Library, which is located in the capital region of New York. So I'm not anywhere near Pat, but we're way up north near the mountains and where the legislator is. So in 2017, I was hired full-time here, just a few months shy of the Board of Trustees passing our 2017-2020 strategic plan. And like most plans, it was created with community and stakeholder feedback and was a mashup of PLA's planning for results and the Harvard turning outward plan. And ultimately, a new value and mission statement was adopted. We committed to being stewards of our natural resources, operate sustainably and transparently, and appreciate everyone for their uniqueness. And as the new hire at Saratoga, with my background in sustainable action and thinking, I was fortunate to get the approval of the board to lead our institution through the certification benchmarking process. Casey, you can change the slide. And the screen is a picture of some of the things we had to or the categories that we had to go through for the benchmarking process and to earn certification. So it was a team effort and required staff from every department to at least be a little open to change and sometimes doing things a new way. And the strategic plan was great because it was a guiding tool to empower staff to make recommendations to be discussed and at times adopted by the management team or the director. So not all of our recommendations have passed yet, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to eventually. So during this plan, we did have a green team, which was a working group of like-minded staff that there was like a call to join, and we also had a staff survey in the beginning, and people, appointed themselves to join the green team. And we made sure that we had at least 2 representatives from each department in our building. And we focused on the environmental benchmarks at that time. We got everyone up to speed on how to be resourceful, make better purchasing decisions, give people permission to turn off the lights, which, believe it or not, can be a problem when you think you're an organization and all the lights need to be on, and they're not self-timed yet or censored. You know, being able to turn off the lights in rooms we don't use was a thing. And then we did have several lessons or 2 on how to recycle and reduce food waste. The social equity or social cohesion and financial sustainability benchmarks appeared at the time to be designed for a library. We were one of the first ones to go through these benchmarks, and they have since had a revamp, but we found it relatively easy to document the work at the time. We were not necessarily the ones ahead of the curve on EDI. It continues to be a work in progress, but we were already having at that time hard conversations. We hosted educational programs for the staff and public, deepened our community partnerships, analyzed our collections, discussed upward mobility opportunities in our library, hosted wellness programs for staff, and a whole lot more. And although we did reach our goals for that strategic plan, there's always room for growth, reevaluation, and continued success. So our library did become the 2nd New York State Public Library to be certified in 2019, which we are very proud of. Next slide, please. So fast forward to the first quarter 2020. Our board approved a contract with Rethinking Libraries to help us work through our next strategic plan. We created a calendar of events to host in-person focus groups. And then, as like most of the world, actually, we closed for in-person business on St. Patrick's Day. And somehow during the pandemic, we all figured out how to host focus groups remotely, have stakeholder retreats online, and we developed a new plan. And on May 28th, just last month, Looking Forward with Your Library was approved by the board. And on the screen, I know it's small and it's not yet on our website. I can't share the link yet, but if anyone's interested in it, when it does go live on our website, this will be our entire plan and process will be on there. We did change the way our values were done. And as you see, sustainability, equity, diversity, inclusion, collaboration, and partnerships are right at the top. And we decided as our vision to focus on a resilient community because we're trying to bounce back from that disruption and move forward. And it was a semantic sticking note for a while using sustainability because all we could think about is we do not want to sustain the pandemic. So we use the term resilient or the word resilient this time. And I think I have one more slide. I do. So there's, so we haven't figured out our activities yet for the upcoming year. It's fresh. So, but those are our 4 areas of focus. They're very aspirational and will be a great challenge for us to try and measure our progress. Some of the things can be checked off the list and measured with data, but showing impact, due diligence, and moving the needle will take some time to assess and measure how we're doing. So during the discussion, I would be open to how you're measuring some of these softer things that are hard to measure with data. And thank you. That's all I've got for now.
All right, cool. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
And so we have a link to the Sustainable Library Certification Program in the resources slide too. And if you want to try that out, that is something that will be coming out nationally in the near future. Right now it is just in New York, but it does measure all 3 aspects of the triple bottom line. So next up, we have Jensen, and I got to meet Jensen a couple of weeks ago now, and I was really excited because he called me, and he's actually an expert in like building sciences and like super hard stuff that us, hard meaning hard sciences, not necessarily difficult. Not that Jensen's job isn't difficult, I'm sure it is. He's a very smart guy. I'm sure he's got no problems with it. But Jensen comes from a different background than a lot of us, right? A lot of us are librarians, and so we know about library stuff, and we're generalists, and we hire other people to help us. So Jensen's a sustainability officer at the Kansas City Library. And so he's going to share with us some of the environmental benchmarks that he has experience with or he's looked into. So thank you very much for joining us today, Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And the slides I'm going to run through here are they're intended to be entirely accessible. In fact, I think that the best way to think about this is from the perspective of what you would be able to articulate to the leadership at your library or to the facilities manager at your library, or how you partner with the community in undertaking some of these things. Now, I should say, I'm new. This is a new position. Our new library director, John Herron, when he came on, wished to spearhead an initiative where the library became a community leader in green practices. Part of that was to create an office for energy and sustainability, and that's where I came in. My background was in leading a similar office for the Kansas City Public Schools, and prior to that, I worked with a number of utilities on creating energy efficiency programs, because I myself had been a heating and cooling contractor and had joined a trade ally network to support progress in the trades towards energy efficiency. So this first slide about environmental measures, so much of what I think can be done easily through invoices or through data collection is to understand the net impacts at our library level. Now, not some of them are very complex, but the easiest ones we're going to run through. And the result of bringing the net impacts down has these other stories that are a part of it. There are health and performance, better than anecdotes now, evidence and ways to measure those performance increases. And I think all of this then bundles up into a kind of literacy, and environmental literacy in this case, that we can share as we move through. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Some of the tools I'm going to talk about real quickly so the first one is from a university in New Hampshire. The idea is that there are tools out there already that are intended to collect data and then produce these comprehensive pictures. Actually, I threw in this SI map or SciMap because I want to show that there are some where you do pay a fee. There's another one actually that comes to mind that might be more accessible called Energy Cap. Not a greenhouse gas emissions tool, rather it's one that takes the utility data and automatically puts it into a sheet for you to review. A lot of people, I think, use spreadsheets nowadays. That's perfectly acceptable too. But probably even easier for those of us on this call would be to work with tools that are available through the federal government, like EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. The Department of Energy has a tool that's being developed and is kind of in the pilot phase right now called SEED. But this is where if libraries were a recognized category for Energy Star, this would be the first step. In the city of Kansas City, we have a benchmarking ordinance. So our city requires all buildings over 50,000 square feet to put their data in Portfolio Manager anyway. But I'm going to get into that in just a bit more detail. I think by now, a lot of folks have heard the Association U.S. Green Building Council, or the LEED rating system. I want to talk a bit about how they've changed over time, because they have a new performance strategy that allows existing buildings more easily to use some of the same platforms and lists. And then this last one I also threw in, again, for the academic librarians. GRITS is a project management tool that has this ability to look both forward and back at the projects that you've undertaken and very clearly say how these benefit, whether it's greenhouse gas or energy efficiency or water efficiency. And sometimes those dollars saved or energy saved gets lost after the project is done. So this way you can go and look backwards. The way this slide is broken out kind of gives a simple description of each of those. But let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I threw this in because when you're thinking about net impacts, there really are different scopes to address. There is scope one is what your direct impact is from the building, from the library, the library's fleet. But it is, and that would include even if you have a natural gas water heating system or air heating system, you're burning natural gas right there on site. So there is a direct impact. Scope two would be those that are indirect, but that you have to use. So for example, in this slide, it says purchased electricity. The truth is there is a greenhouse gas, or there's a resource consumption. You aren't physically doing it, but your purchase, and Casey alluded to this, is implicated. And then there are a lot of other indirect impacts. And I think as we measure sustainability, we should start where we can, and then just remember that there's opportunities for growth. So let's move on to the next slide. If you'll, and it looks like I put these maybe in reverse order, I apologize, but I'm gonna run past this one. You remember the last one I mentioned on that first slide? Oh, no, go ahead and keep it up at GRITS, great. So GRITS is a project tracking tool. It's actually pretty common, or I have found it to be common among community colleges and the universities. And I bring it up because it's I think, again, for those of us that are on this call, I don't know how many facility managers are here, but it is the school districts and the universities and the city governments are, in my sense, they're a little further along on this path. And so there are tools that have been developed to help those organizations capture this data that I think we should probably leverage. And maybe that's if you have a university in your town, or you have a community college, or if you have a sustainability representative at your city government, you might reach out to them and ask, how is it that you are capturing or measuring data for project management? But this is a tool that is readily available. And as I said, it's valuable because it's so often the case that once a project is in place, people forget how much energy they were using or would have been using had the project not been adopted. The next slide talks about Portfolio Manager, which I mentioned was the Energy Star tool. Now, Portfolio Manager is part of a lot of Energy Star related educational material and programs, like the Energy Treasure Hunt is mentioned on the slide. So Energy Treasure Hunt is a very fun way to kind of gather data that could ultimately go into your Portfolio Manager tool. And the Portfolio Manager is meant really for those, you collect those invoices for electricity or gas or water. You collect some basic building data, and then you put it together, and what it shows you is the kind of the intensity of your building, even at a square foot level. And then it compares it to a national, it normalizes it against a national database that that also, it's a national database because they look at the categories, like a library, for example, or school, but it tries to normalize it with areas of the nation that would be experiencing similar climate. Okay, next slide. I mentioned the U.S. Green Building Council had a new strategy beyond LEED, and that new line is called ARC. It is a performance-based measurement, kind of a database. I've said the word tool now 20 or 30 times, so if somebody could throw a good synonym in the chat. It is, what's valuable about ARC, I find, is it takes that Portfolio Manager data that you've already done work with, and it populates the energy and the water metrics automatically. Waste is something you have to do a bit of a waste audit. Transportation takes into consideration your fleet, or it can actually take into consideration if you know, say, that your workforce driving habits. And then human experience, oftentimes people are using as the default the air quality of the building. But the point is that it's trying to stretch that conversation. And this is something that you can be, the early steps are free. So you can begin to enter all of this about your building. You can build your building out there entirely. If you want to pursue certification with the U.S. Green Building Council, that's the only point at which you have to start then engaging with a consultant or registration fees or what have you. So, and again, it too compares your building, but really it's trying to benchmark you against yourself. Okay, I threw in one more slide, and this one is from a friend of mine in the land of school districts. So if you notice on the right, there is, you can go to the link for, we're not going to do this, but I just want you all to see that you can do this. You can go to the link for Energy Star's Portfolio Manager, and you can enter in this code, FCPS guest, and the password view only. This is actually something we're hoping to do for our library district, but this will take you to that school district's true building data. You can't manipulate it, you can't enter anything into it, you can't harm it, but you could go through and you could see how buildings are entered that have, some have all electric buildings, or, it's really interesting to get in there and see how and you can see how all the reports work. And I think that's the end of my slide. So again, this is meant for discussion. We can talk more about any of those. I'd love to hear the experience of others if any of you have begun to benchmark your buildings. But this is really about collecting very basic building data, working maybe with your accounts department or with your facility manager to get some utility bills. And the pictures that it's able then to provide are how you begin the conversation.
All right, thank you, Jensen. So as I said earlier, we do have all of the resources that we talked about today gathered onto this page right here. We have short links for you to get there and longer links when they make sense. And you can access all of these things at the link at the top there, the bit.ly link with the Sustain RT Discussion 21. You can feel free to go there and grab this, and you can share it out with folks. It's a view only mode of the presentation here, so you can't break it, so that's good. But we wanted to see if there were any questions or any other kind of measurements that folks have been using out there that they wanted to share. We have a lot of people on the call here. We're from all over the country and possibly all over the world. I don't know for exactly right now, but other folks may be working with something else, had success with different measurement tools or questions about them. I'd love to hear any of that. I believe folks can unmute or use the chat. And Tara, you got an eye on the chat, right?
Real quickly.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw that Matt asked a question about a building being inside of a larger building. Certainly at the project level, you could evaluate. So for example, a lighting replacement, you could evaluate that at the project level. And then Portfolio Manager does actually allow you to cut up spaces and define what the evaluation pertains to. In fact, you could even redesignate. Part of your space could be used like an office, part of it could be used like a gymnasium, and it would affect the number outcome differently.
All right, cool. And I just found the chat. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to see it before, but it looks like there's been some good discussion in here. If anybody wants to, I believe folks can unmute if they're participants in the call and they want to share some information, they can.
Casey, someone named Lori had raised her hand. I don't know if Lori had a question.
Cool.
Hi there.
Hey.
Yes. Hey, hello there. Good morning from Los Angeles. Thank you. Thank you very much for this discussion. So my question deals with bringing sustainability to a very large public library system. Los Angeles is the size of a planet. And so I've been taking notes both in the previous session and here of what to bring to administration, but I'm also curious of how to raise these concerns with staff choices, takeout, printing out every email A and B on brand new paper and what have you. I'm asking a lot here, but I just wonder what guidance the room can give to, I know there's working with administration, that's its own thing, but also working with staff with their own choices.
Mm-hmm. Jen, yeah.
I can speak a little bit on that. Not going to sell this. I will sell the sustainability library initiatives, but that had at a simple level of something you can do right now is find like-minded people in your building, get a working group together and see what you can do for it, at the very least education. When I said in my presentation, like we taught people how to recycle, we had to teach people how to recycle. But part of the benchmarking thing, like you mentioned, printing too much. Well, we changed all of our printers to be black and white only and double-sided. So if anybody wanted something else, they had to uncheck all the boxes. Simple, and that was working with our IT staff. You can start small with something like that, but you have to have the staff buy-in from administration or the head of the IT department. I'm sure, we're only 100 people and I guess it's bigger than some, but not as big as yours. And you probably have whole departments with lots of people. So if you could get a group of people together to start working on some of the small things and make some incremental changes, it goes a long way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Might be good too. It might be more of a journey for you too, with so many people and so many different, buildings and personalities and stuff that it builds slowly, and you get there eventually and not overnight. Unfortunately, we all want to be done right away, right?
Right. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions they want to share audibly? I see there are some questions in the chat.
I see somebody was asking about sustainability working at home model. which actually I think could be a little easier than doing it in a building or an organization. But that I welcome anybody else's on the panel.
I have a couple thoughts about that. I wonder if there's anybody on the call from, well, actually, Lori, you're in LA. You might be able to confirm something for me. This is a program that I heard about first at Denver Public, but I've since heard that maybe it's at LA as well. It's like a power meter checkout or an energy audit backpack that's available at the library that gives people guidance on how to do a kind of a very cursory audit of their own home. You guys have something like that?
Wow, I need to investigate this.
Well, Denver Public does, and if you search for, I think it's called Power Meter or Power Check something or other, it probably will come up. So that, you know, my first thought about it is that we can all, there are a lot of partners in our communities that can help at the library level. They can also, you know, they're concerned about these issues. They might be focused on kind of what they can do at the residential level. And I think encouraging our colleagues with this information is useful. The other thing that, and we just nearly did this at the school district. I haven't shared this around here yet, but so there is the team that aggregates the dollars associated with employee health. They have latitude on how that money is spent, and some programs like you're familiar with, sometimes they spend it to do yoga or what have you. But in Little Rock, I can't remember which business this was. They had a program where that team elected to create a pool of funds that people participated in, where a true energy audit, one that was supported by a professional network, was made available to the employees who wanted to participate. And then they braided those funds with incentives that came from the local utilities. So again, I'm talking a bit more about the environmental impacts, but it was, to me, a very novel approach to engaging employees. And it was treated just like a health and wellness program, but kind of for your home.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know a lot of libraries loan. I think they're called like kilowatts. You can plug them in and you can measure stuff. And that's one of those great library things, because we were just talking about that the other night on Sustain RT. You use those for a week, and then this adult toy that you got, not adult toy, I'm sorry, but this grown-ups toy that you would play with is boring to you now. And so that's a great thing to go back to the library. But it's also interesting too, because working from home, you have more incentive maybe to be smarter about the electricity you use or the heating and cooling that you use, because you're paying for it. I don't know that a lot of businesses are saying, you're working from home, don't worry, we got your electric bill, so crank up that AC, right? So getting that energy audit, finding out what you can do and what those costs would be, maybe that's another education opportunity, you know, setting people up with those audits. A lot of times, or I don't know, in New York State, they're free sometimes. They're subsidized by our NYSERDA, New York State Energy and Research and Development Agency. But that's a cool idea. Working from home definitely is an interesting challenge for us, because we don't control people's homes as much. Tara, do we have any other questions, or does anybody have any other thoughts or comments on working from home sustainably?
Lisa is answering Amber with a few of the ideas of working sustainably from home. So and also I'd add with your lunch, are you composting the rest of it, you know, or is that going in a trash can to the landfill?
Yeah.
Which is not sustainable.
All right, cool. So that's a good one. Are there any other questions in there that you think we should address, Tara, or does anybody else want to take the unmute opportunity to share something or ask a question?
Casey, do you want me to put some of the planted questions to spur everybody, spur anybody to thinking, you know, like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You know, like I'm thinking about, the triple bottom line that suggests interconnection, which we've talked about a number of times, but interconnecting the three to show that it's all sustainable is like something that's not obvious when you first are unfamiliar with the topic, that it is all interconnected, and that's why it works. That's why it's sustainable.
Okay. So they are related, like we said, to the triple bottom line. We were talking about it earlier that, we want to make sure that, things are equitable for folks, and that, we can actually afford the things, that we're doing the right thing with the money, and that we are, considering the environment with the things that we do. I do see two folks raise their hands, so I'm wondering if we can, Lori, was your hand up again, or is it Dorothy? Is your hand up?
No, I'll lower my hand, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Hey, Dorothy, did you want to, hey.
Yeah, I hate to change the subject, but
Oh.
I was wondering about mentality of your staff, because I've experienced a change in the mentality of the staff since COVID. They seem a lot more politicized about different things, and especially recycling. And I've had a hard time even getting small things to change. Like we have this login for receiving newspapers each day. And I wanted to just go from logging it in a paper form to taking it online in a spreadsheet. And even that was just denied pretty flatly, not by the management, but by other coworkers. And that's just one example, but it seems like there's a hurdle when it comes to recycling mentality and getting everybody on board.
Hey, Casey, this is
Hey.
Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Dorothy, last year when our staff, I'm in New York, and we went virtual, like most of New York had to do because of the pandemic. I likened working from home to doing surgery without anesthesia, because everyone had different comfort levels with technology. It was much easier in person. If I didn't know how to do something, for Casey to back me up and step in the middle of a reference question and be like, oh, let me show you how to do this. And I never needed to learn how to do anything. So a lot of, I think some of the staff resistance is actually resistance to change, not resistance to sustainability per se, or paper versus non-paper. It's people feel dumb at a certain point saying, I don't know how to use an online spreadsheet. I don't know how to do this. It's like when we're in meetings, or, when ALA in person used to be a thing, and I would see certain people once a year for 5 years in a row. And on the 5th year, I was like, oh my God, I can't ask them their name. Their name tag is the wrong way. I should know who that is. I've seen them for 5 years. I feel like an idiot saying, what's your name again? I think staff sometimes put too much pressure on themselves, and that kind of resistance is anxiety and fear. So at some point, sometimes you have to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're using an online spreadsheet. We're gonna, do some one-on-one tutorials or one-on-one Zoom trainings, sign up if you want to come in person, that kind of stuff. And I think just starting small in those areas, instead of doing everything at once, because sometimes doing all the sustainability things at once also is overwhelming. Another example personally is just composting. My husband used to work on a farm, and he would not let me compost at home because, quote, we'll have rats. And then guess what happened? Across where we lived, a builder built 23 houses, knocked down all these trees and a local, the landscape, and all the deer and the mice and rats had nowhere to go and wound up in the neighborhood with or without a compost pile. So now I have a compost pile. You have to start small and then realize that some of what people are, it's fear. And if you try it and you take it away, they realize, a lot of our staff came back and was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And by the way, we also at one point, I realized I need to buy everybody a laptop, because also working from home, not everybody has the same technology. Not everybody had the same. And so that equity, that had to come through, and the institution had to support that, right? To say to people, this is what you need to work from home. So yes, we're going to provide A, B, and C.
All right. Thank you, Lisa and Dorothy. I'm not sure if that helps exactly. I know staff who don't want to do stuff is always a difficult thing to deal with. I think, I always like to think, even in my household, right? It occurs in the household. Why is this in the garbage again? How many times have I said this? How many times have I yelled about this? But training even for 11-year-old girls and wives who are women who are my own age, that goes a long way sometimes. So we had a question here about online tasks and considering, and this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart too, is sometimes we think that, oh, we're doing it online. Look how green we are, right? And there certainly are savings in terms of our carbon footprint to that, but there are also costs that I think we are kind of blind to sometimes. I don't know if anybody has considered this seriously or in any kind of detailed way in their own work or in attending these conferences or anything like that. All right. Tara, do we have any other questions from anybody?
No, everybody's been answering them back and forth.
Cool.
Lisa, you talked about craft programming and buying compostable takeout containers. One thing, and I hope I'm not overstepping, but these kind of containers, they really are a false answer. And you need to be careful about using them because they are only compostable in certain composters, like usually giant composters that have high heat. So you really can't compost those kind of items in your little compost pile in the back. So you have to be careful. And another thing about recycling, that's also a false answer to any of it. So we really have to go deep into say what's actually sustainable. I just was listening to a podcast and they were talking about that, they did all of these LCAs, lifetime cycle analysis, and using reuse of a cup or a bottle or a plate or silverware. It really only takes 2 or 3 times to become more efficient, more sustainable than plasticware as one item. That's so we really have to go deep and think, well, maybe it is important to bring back reusable items into the library. It's why does convenience have to be the most important thing, out of everything? So consider that. There's I'll stop. There's, if anybody has more questions, I'm sure. So thank you.
One of the things that this is Jensen again. I so in the new construction field where you have a lot of control, in some cases, there is a move in the building of zero carbon buildings. How to get at this? So there's a larger recognition that there are parts of, when you're deciding, like I'll give an example, when you're deciding between a timber frame building versus a steel frame building versus a concrete, and of course no building is purely one or the other, but you can spec one path or another in more ways, and you just have to consider the same safety, consider the availability of materials and safety and what have you. But what they're doing now is they're beginning to look at what parts of the construction process produce the most carbon. Again, it's not like a silver bullet about the materials. In fact, the materials are only a piece of it. But I guess I bring it up to say that this whole question about kind of climate change and our contribution to greenhouse gases does give us the ability to evaluate if, again, some of these solutions have more or less of an impact, and if that makes sense. And so sometimes maybe what you want to do is you want to balance how much effort you're putting forward to make certain that you're working on something that has a huge impact, and then maybe you're also filling in with things that have they have an impact, they're value based maybe a bit more, or they're educational a bit more, but they don't necessarily have the same part of this triple bottom line impact. So I think that's, if any of that makes sense, that's one of the advantages of starting to measure all this stuff, is you can try to do that balance. It reminded me, just to kind of extend that analogy a bit. So when I was with the school district, we did a huge energy service company based project where you take, you need to replace some chillers. Those are expensive, and it's not like you save a lot of energy replacing one for another, but you balance that work with a lot of other measures, like you do the lighting, you do retro commissioning in your building, and in the end you can create a package that will have a particular payback of, let's say, 15 years or something. The only way to have arrived at that was to have bundled everything together. The chillers would never pay for themselves according to that measure. The lighting would have paid for itself in the first year. But if you wanted to go before the public and say, hey, we need capital for this type of project, you can bundle those things together, and by doing that, tell the story that way.
All right, I think we have a couple more minutes. If anybody wants to ask a question or share anything, again, that's why we're here. That's why we put this together. But in the last couple of minutes, I do want to say thank you to Jen and Ashun and Jensen and Tara also, and Sustain RT, and everybody who came out today for sharing a little bit about how we're trying to figure out how to make our libraries and our organizations more sustainable. I think that it is about measurement. Otherwise, we're just kind of guessing at what we're doing, or maybe anecdotally saying that we're improving things. So putting measurements in place, I think, is a good thing to do. If you are getting started with measurements, I will put a vote out there for the Sustainable Libraries Initiative at sustainablelibrariesinitiative.org. That is kind of an all-in-one place, and a really good place to start, and a really good place to start building a team too. As we've heard, you can have the best idea, but if people aren't going to do it, it doesn't matter, right? You'll never be able to move things forward. So part of that project, and that when you do that program, is you actually build the team who's going to help you sell it to the other folks in the organization. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. It looks like we have one more question that I think we have time for. This is from Kendra. Kendra, if you wanted to unmute, you could.
Sure. No, I just always think about how since I work in the school library realm, I'm always thinking about how we're involving our students in our teams in the process of the work. Because for me, this is perfect for an inquiry project that they examine what's going on at their school or within their system and their community. But I just also think about the comments about the mentality of the adults, but thinking differently about the mentality of your teenagers, and that you have a different population that perhaps you may have opportunity to work with, who may be excited to offer suggestions or contribute with the diversity audit work, or the examination of environmental practices, and be supporters and champions within your patron community. And just thinking about setting the stage for those individuals as they get older, and engaging them when they're younger, instead of always relying solely on our adults, and in particular our staff, to be the ones who get on board, that perhaps the push comes from somewhere else, and that we can include our younger folks in the work that we're doing as well.
Absolutely, that's a great idea, Kendra. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Unless anybody has anything else really pressing that they want to share, I think that's a good note to end it on. And again, I appreciate everybody coming out. All right, well, thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody for coming out. You can access the slides again using the broken link, or the not the broken link, but the misspelled link. You can use that to access the slides. You'll also find contact info for everybody who is on the webinar here today. So feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to talk more about these things, but it sounds like y'all are on your way to doing these things too. So please stay in touch.